Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. I'm gonna make another video, and in this video, I want to make a case, as always, for the existence of the correct direction of life and incorrect direction of life, and how they do not mix. And I just want to use few examples to show you that that is the case. One example I want to use that is seen in physics, in electromagnetism, because it does really give away a lot of information and keeps it very simple, because I want things to be very simple because they are simple. When we're talking about this essence, this first thing that we got to take care of to play the game of life in the right direction, okay? Because there's a lot of incentives outside of you that's taking you not in this direction, okay? And one of those I want to talk about is, of course, when first of all, let's look at the consciousness for 1 second, and so then we can be a little bit more aware of what's going on energetically, and can see how one form of energy flow relates to holistic matrix, if you will, or holistic society, or let's just use it, holistic society, or holistic game of life, and another, how it leads to, I suppose, holistic, but let's call it matrix society, okay? Because that word is used a lot. So there's a matrix society and a holistic society, and I'll keep on talking about this because there are indeed just those two ways of experiencing world, this reality, okay? Now, if you're looking at magnetism, and I hope I don't have anything to kind of draw, but I hope I'll just explain to you, and you can Google it or search engine it and find whatever you need to find. But there's this thing, I mean, if you want to verify this, you can verify that. You should verify that. But there's this phenomenon. When you take two magnets together, right, and one is having the North Pole up and another one has North Pole up, and so then therefore this magnet has a South Pole over here, and this one has a North Pole over here and a South Pole over here. So when you put those two together, what happens is that not only that each individual magnet, it has its own field, it also starts creating a collective field. So it creates a unified magnetic field and individual magnetic fields. It happens, any physicist could attest to that. Now, in this moment, it's actually hinting huge information, okay? Now, what you do, if you flip it around and you have north to north pole, right? They do not create a unified field. What happens, they create actually a repelling field. This repelling field has like its own repelling field, right? And so what you have instead of two magnets together having unified field, what you have two magnets separated by this another repelling field. And that happens when you invert the magnet, this one, or that one. And so right, yeah, this one or that one. So if you invert them, then you get that repelling effect, because what you end up having is either north to north, that's masculine to masculine, and it creates its own repelling field, or south to south, and it also creates a repelling field in another different way. What does it mean? North to north, that's pain, fear, and all these other things. It creates that repelling field, which you can call fear, because it stems from pain, fear, anxiety, blah, 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 nervousness, you know what I'm saying? The south to south, it creates also repelling field, but in the opposite direction. And that is depression. That is this, poof, this like depressive energy. Pressure, depression, stuff like that. Okay? So now what do we have here? Okay, we have two phenomena. When the poles are correct, they're unifying and creating unified field. When the poles are incorrect, they having a separate field. Okay, now that energy has to reconcile somehow. Okay, and that energy reconciles what you would call, for example, in this case, that sensation of pain or sensation of depression, you got to fix it somehow, right? And so one way to do this is externally create the pacifying mechanism so that energy can flow. Okay, and so that's one way of being, matrix way of being. And then actually this repelling thing that is created, like a separate little field of energy between that between that magnet and that magnet, that's what you call ego, which is based on what? Pain and pressure. That's ego. And that happens when you invert the masculine or invert the feminine pole. That's why in the matrix everything has to be inverted. And it has to be also programmed everybody that is okay, because incentive is that, look, there's no other way, right? You gotta be this way because that's your release. If you want to release, you better be this way. And so therefore, like what's been sold, like for example, the females reward a behavior that is incorrect, because then they, the men, let's say, end up having this release, this sex, for example, release, and then so therefore they have to corrupt themselves and go this way and grow their ego in order to get that release from the feminine. And the same women have to now, in order to get that release from the masculine, also have to grow their egos. Everything incentivized to grow your ego. Okay, stemming from that originally incorrect relationship of the poles. Now, whenever everything is correct and it's beginning to overlap, then that you create another field. As you can see, for example, if I make a bubble in the bubble here and I overlap, you get that third eye, right? Like, Pisces. Then the center is the soul. And then this would be mind, soul, and body. And they're all unified. Whenever it doesn't work like that, and those two magnets are separate, they have to be reconciliated right here, and it creates another bubble right here. So you see, it's still three, but in this case, there's an ego. This case is a soul. Ego, soul. Okay? Why am I showing these things? Because this is sometimes, like, for example, shown as a Star of David, and there is a reason why. Because there is an overlap of certain type of magnetic energy flows that look like these cones. And it's depicted as a triangle, this triangle and that triangle. And so therefore, when they overlap, you have Star of David, right? And that's a depiction of soul, you see. And so if you buy into the matrix thing. And it's not just a little bit kind of, it's not a big deal. I'm just going to go the way everybody's going because that's the way I get my release. It is basically selling your soul. You're literally getting that release. You're getting the fame and everything. And you see it is in Hollywood. I'm going to get to this in the entertainment, about the entertainment industry. You have to sell your soul in order to become famous. And this is why now you kind of start seeing through the dark side of the celebrity status. And there's quite a few people did not sell their soul, and they find it very difficult, of course, to be pushed ahead for the people to see, the fame. Their fame was affected, and they had to go their like independent way, and they gained their own followers in an independent manner without selling their soul. There's few people that did this. The rest of the people, they didn't do that. Okay, but before we go into the entertainment industry, let's look at one more time about this magnetic field. And by the way, you can check this out, okay, if I'm saying the truth or not, and you can check this and to make sure this is correct. Why is it so important? Because physics reflects the metaphysics. Okay, what like I said, what is it? The upper magnet represents the logos or the mind, the lower the body, and the overlap is either the soul or the ego. Okay, soul has, like I said, this unifying field, which means that there is no separation within you. It's unified. So any kind of action that you're going to take is going to be out of joy, because you already have joy. You want to do something with that joy. The ego, you are going to be looking for ways to fix the suffering, because like I just described, those two magnets creating those repelling energies. Okay, now speaking a little bit more about the symbolism, the Star of David, like I said, it symbolizes that. It actually symbolizes the creation of the soul, and which, by the way, we're here in this game to create the soul. Okay, not ego. We're here to create the soul, because if you create the ego, you win in the matrix, but you lose in life. You really lose heavily. Okay, now let's look at the symbolism that symbolizes this thing that is not overlapping but creating another separate thing. It is creating a separate thing, and if you look at the magnetic fields, the way they're flowing not in a vortex kind of manner, but they're creating this like that and like that. It's creating almost like an X, right? And then in order for you to get any kind of alleviation from that split, you got to overlap this V and that V to have that little center, which I would call ego, or the heart of coal. And you got to grow that ego to reconciliate those two parts that were connected in the wrong place in the first place. And how does it look like in your life? It is actually you suffering and going and using anything to pacify that pain. Fame is included in that. Status is included in that. Chasing the dragon, right? It's all included into that. You need that hit, because that's not been dealt with. Okay? Some recognition, something, some other thing. But that's the root cause. Now, in order for you to reconciliate this, you got to cheat. You got to be either a crook or a whore, as they say, of course, colloquially speaking. But in essence, another word like incubus, succubus, whatever. But that's what you got to do to. And so in order for you to create that abomination, this, and then when they overlap, it doesn't create a Star of David. It creates something what you can see as a Masonic symbolism or Aleister Crowley symbolism. That does not signify good. That signifies the matrix itself, the Satan itself, because Satan and matrix is the same thing. It signifies that a mode of being. It's a mode of being. It's a mode of consciousness. It is nothing personal. Some people just choose to be in that mode of being. Okay? And others who do not choose to be in this mode of being, they, by definition, they have to be an alchemist, as I call it, as to be able to transmute these energies. And if there is pain or pressure, you go inside there and you alleviate that with your own attention. No tricks, nothing, not even psychedelics, nothing, right? With your own attention and awareness. I mean, psychedelics can help you open up at the beginning, but like I always say, well, I don't always say that, but you only need to have, let's say, one breakthrough of DMT for you to connect to that, and you don't need to take any more, because that's going to be enough. It's going to guide you to that already, right? You don't need. This is why I say, like, if you take it once, connect to what you got to connect, and you don't need to take it again. You really don't, because if you're gonna keep on relying on these things, again, what you're gonna get into the trap again. You're feeling bad or whatever, and so you're gonna take something from the outside. It's gonna alleviate that thing. You start creating the spiritual ego. Okay, this is why just because somebody's taking psychedelics doesn't mean that they're growing the soul. The mind, as you can see, the mind and the body can function with no soul. So if somebody opens their mind and they start seeing things, they're becoming much more effective at creating even stronger ego. Okay? This is why just because somebody's taking psychedelics does not mean that they are good at all. And to a lot of people who cannot go there, who cannot alchemize those energies, they get into this trap. And this is why psychedelics can be addictive if nobody is doing any kind of journeying towards alchemizing the ego and turning it into the soul, so to speak, breaking down the beliefs. Okay. Now, so we can see this phenomena happening in physics, and we can also relate this to our psychological states. There is such thing as pain. Nobody can argue with that. There is such thing as pressure. Nobody can argue with that, right? Or at least that's how you would you see it. And then the answer is, like I always say, the point in the circle: the attention and awareness, not words, not nothing. And in fact, I'm not even sure that the way I see it, and if the reality indeed works like that, that it's not the words that I'm saying here, really, that may make a difference. It's my own state of consciousness, because it means that I project a certain type of reality. And so from your perspective, it's also the same thing. You project your own reality. But there's no way for me to see that that's even real, But you, from your perspective, I assume a lot that you even exist. But you see what I'm saying? If you're really, really honest about everything, then it does seem like there's no such thing as spiritual teachings. You can, teach spirituality. It's like an energy that is being transmitted. That's all it is. But you can't teach it. Um, and if you're, like I said, this unified energy field, if you have that unified energy field, everybody else is invited to join that energy field. They either double down on the ego or they join that field. And that's what it seems like it's happening. Which means there's nothing that um, it's not in the words that I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? It's not in the words. And the most that you can do is to understand that a 0 point or point in a circle, which is your attention and awareness of how you can move to that state of consciousness where it's capable of handling any kind of pressure and pain. And so in that moment, you are basically, when there's separation, pain, pressure, what you do is like, pow, and then something infinite is inside you, which I call peace and bliss. And so which then those two uniting. And this is what you do as an alchemist, uniting those two. But as you unite in a time reality, this is why would you do this here in the matrix? Because then you end up having this phenomenon of infinite within time, right? And this is why you pick the temporal reality to do so. But this temporal reality, people are playing game in the backwards direction. A lot of people playing game in that backwards direction, but a lot of people are exiting that also. Okay, they don't want this anymore. And it is tricky. You see what I'm trying to say? It is tricky to not to fall back into it, which right now brings me to this concept called entertainment. Okay, now entertainment means something. It means to contain inside. Entertainment. Another word for it, amusement. And amuse, again, means to distract you from something. Okay, amuse means to distract you away from something. Both mean something sinister. Okay, now why do you need to, when you're creating the matrix society, you need to account for the entertainment. It has to be there, because you understand that you, in this mode of society, you will create a lot of pain and depression, or fear and depression, or whatever, anxiety, depression, whatever. You know that you're going to create it, and you're going to have to create the so-called thing, entertainment, which allows people to release that thing, right? In that society, you have to have that. Otherwise, you cannot control that society. So that's why there's this birth of so-called entertainment. And Hollywood became a symbol of the entertainment. And because Hollywood is this facet of entertainment of the matrix, which includes music, movies, everything, right? This is what ended up being. And now you can see through this and understand that people in entertainment industry that do belong to the Hollywood genuinely are people who have no souls. They literally have no souls. They sold their soul. You have to sell your soul to be part of this entertainment industry. Okay? Now, you may ask a question, well, then is it all, distraction? In the matrix, yes, this is all distraction. It's just like, what, you can't watch anything? No, this is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is another thing, and I would call this enjoyment. There's an entertainment and enjoyment. And in the matrix society, you have to have entertainment because you have to somehow get away from the pain and suffering. In the holistic society, there is enjoyment because you've got to do something with that energy of joy. You see? And there is this active participating activity and passive mind-numbing and and just numbing the pain and suffering activity, which is, you see what I'm trying to say. And then enjoyment is something else. You dancing, that's active participating, and you can have a lot of fun. Playing games where you're acting, participating, and you're having a lot of fun, right? um, there's some sort of like an active participation, and that is enjoyment. Okay. But even music, you can listen to music and you can enjoy music, or you can listen to music into this pop music to kind of distract you from the fact that you know that your life is a mess. But for the time being, let's forget about it, let's entertain ourselves, kind of thing. It's a distraction. But I'm not against fun. I'm just saying that entertainment is not fun. And so anybody who has the intention to become famous and entertain the world, they're participating toward this demonic cluster. And this is what's been kind of gnawing at me, because it's like, oh, I don't want to judge people, but then I would look at these people and like what you would consider famous, and you can say, well, maybe it's envy, right? Because they're famous and you're not, and so maybe that's, you have envy. And I consider that also, but that's not what I found in the end. It's that like I said, it is indeed participation in the matrix society, and I know that people are so programmed that this is normal and this is okay, and they can't see that there could be another way of being, that they have kind of any kind of respect for these people. And I know, like, before I used to watch this so-called entertainment and everything, and I maybe even admired um, these popular figures and stuff like that. But once I moved to the jungle and ended up being with my own pain and pressure, and dealing with this directly, then there's all sorts of insights and realizations that come in that show me otherwise, and I start seeing through things. And it may not be pleasant at first to see through things, because then you lose your heroes, and you see that your hero was just pile of coal, and you may not want to. I understand the reluctance of trying to see or beginning to see through things. But then you also start seeing people who did not give up, did not sell their soul, okay, had to somehow deal with their own emotional thing, being canceled, being done this onto them and done that onto them, but they somehow persevering in their art and keeping their souls intact. And then of course there are people like that. They don't really belong to the Hollywood, but these are the people that you can kind of see, like, okay, that's the people who, and usually you can see them that they're enjoying and having fun. They're not there to please anybody. They're having fun, and and then you kind of join their fun that they're having. And so that's fun. And so then we have to have a different word for them, because they're not really entertaining. They're perhaps performing, artists, the real artist. They're entertainer, and the artist might be two different things. And it is. Artist must have a soul. Entertainer must not have a soul. Okay. All right. So Now, I also have to say something. The mind and the body, they also symbolize something else. The mind symbolizes the future, and the body symbolizes the past. And whenever those two overlap, the presence becomes overlapping. There's a present, there's a past, and there's a future. They don't disappear. This is why people say, like, well, there's no past, there's no future. No, there's still a past, there's still a future, but there's also presence now. If you try to push away past or the future, then it's not going to, you can't live life like that, right? You, of course, there's of course there's a future, there's a time, there's a chronological, and there's chirological past and a future, and it exists. But there's also overarching presence, okay? And that presence kind of expands into the past and expands into the future. And so what does this allows you to do? First of all, it allows you to alchemize the past as it's expanding, because chirological past is always, kind of negative, and the future is always ideal, right? Because, I mean, if you imagine something that is your ideal, that's future. And the past, something that was less than an ideal, that's past, right? I'm not talking about chronological, but I'm talking about psychological. Let's just use that word. There's a psychological ideal and a psychological, negative. So anyway, so what I'm trying, the presence is expanding, so it allows you to alchemize more and more of that thing called past, the darkness. So you get to alchemize more and more of that so-called past, which is always the patterns that are incorrect. And as you alchemize that, you also sort of seep into the future. And how does it manifest in your life? It manifests as premonitions, presentiments, and precognitions. Premonition would be something like a bodily sensation that you feel in your body, some sensation before it actually is going to happen. Okay, this is a phenomenon, because your presence is now is expanded, and it involves the more past and more future. Does that make sense? Because the time becomes now more pliable. And this is why in the present moment there's a future seeping in the present moment, and the past seeping in the present moment. So there's a lot more to alchemize, and then you begin to see like I said, premonitions, presentiments, and precognitions. Precognition would be an image, a vision. For example, you may wake up in the morning and you remember the dream, and the dream is like a certain way, and then you go throughout the day and whoa, and you see a lot of similarities. As a precognition. And then it could be also presentiment, which I assign it to feelings, and you could actually have the feeling before it's about to happen. Does that make sense? So you may have a feeling of something, like it's almost as if it's happening, and you're living that feeling, and it may be positive, but there's nothing else outside you that's going on, but you're already living that, and then it actually happens to you, but you already lived through once in your feelings. Okay, so these things begin to happen as well as you beginning to live a life in the correct direction. Okay, as you can see, naturally, with no tricks, and as also you can see, mind is also available even like in that separate thing, and then you can use your mind, but everything that you're going to use your mind from the ego is just going to be more bolstering of your ego. This is why, so to speak, I don't want to use this word, but this is why this thing is first. You got to And then whatever you need to see will come to you. Okay? As you alchemize the past, the future is, there's more future that's coming to you. And you live your life more uh, where you have the future and your past, with you, and the present moment. Okay? Because that's what makes you a better player and to navigate the world in a better way. Because when you have no ego, you gain soul, and the soul is much better at playing the game of life, so much better. Okay. And I also have to say something, that soul, mind, and body also has yin and yang qualities, right? And as I call it, in the soul, there's an attention and awareness, okay? But like I said this before, but I want to clarify a little more. In the mind, there's intention and allowance. I'm using these words, but you can use them interchangingly. It's actually a form of projection and reflection, right? And in the body, there's action and then realization, which is might be like building a certain type of structure and then letting the structure work. Would you receive the gift of that structure, right? Like action, relaxation. Okay. Now, um, as you can see, to even gain a soul, you need attention and awareness to even get to that state, because you start from here and your mind always wants to go either past or the future. But if you allow it to fall between the cracks, in between, which is neither past neither future, and the mind cannot do it and your body cannot do it, there's this phenomenon of soul that arises, which now you have this radiant feeling of some degree of peace, some degree of bliss, or some form of bliss, some degree of peace. This is how I say it. Okay? Again, I'm saying these words, but they do refer to the states of consciousness. These are not empty words. But you cannot arrive there through words either. You can arrive there through putting attention, which anybody can do, on the things that are trying to get your attention, which is your pain or pressure. Okay? That's how you start. Then after that, it's still, when you, for example, you may put attention on some feeling that is, let's say, some form of disgust. You put attention there, and as you don't move away from it, it might dissolve and it may turn into some pleasant, positive, as you would call, positive feeling, a good feeling from that disgust to something that is awesome. Then it's with you. Everything that you've alchemized, every gem that you discovered, it's with you. Later, you can just put attention again and you get the response. Again, the masculine is like putting the light there and getting reflection. It's like if I put attention here, poof, that's the feeling that I receive. If I put attention here, poof, that's the feeling that I receive. Okay? It's working like that. And in the Hindu tradition, it's called Brahman and Saraswati. Brahman is attention and projecting attention, and Saraswati is awareness of the feeling or state. Okay, pow. Then in the mind, there's this intent. Okay, you may intend a certain type of form, which is, this is why this is important. Why do you need intent? Because why you can't just let everything go? Because life is a game. You got to play it. You have to play the game. If you don't play the game, then the life is not gonna go the way you plan. And of course, like, the attention is masculine, intent is masculine, allowance and awareness is feminine. Okay, so using these Neville Goddard teachings. And what he was teaching, say, hey, set the intent, or he said like the law of assumption, assume, which is basically tuning in to that outcome, and said, see that outcome, live that outcome, feel that outcome the best way you can, just basically the best way you can imagine. You're sending that intent, and you're basically trying to burn the pattern in the projector screen. Okay, not in the projector screen, sorry, I should say in the projector film, because then when the projector shines, there's a pattern on your screen, which is your 3D physical world. Okay, so you're burning up the film that is going to be reeling. When you are imagining the outcome, okay, when you're imagining the outcome, and then he also said that don't worry about how it's going to come about. But this is where I want to kind of fill in the gap. She just ended up by saying that you're gonna receive the inspired action. That's what he said, and he left it at that. But I want to expand on that, because what's really going on, there's another phenomenon that's going on. As you are imagining the outcome or dreaming the outcome, for example, lucid dreaming is a type of dreaming that you are intending something to dream, and you're creating it, right? And you're experiencing, you're intending, creating. It's active, it's very masculine, where you're creating your environment, and you're enjoying that environment as you create it. Then there's other types of dreams that you may have, where there might be vivid dreams, and the vision comes to you, and the vision may show the steps that you're about to take towards that outcome. Okay, it may have like these breadcrumbs, and you may wake up in the morning and you say that the dream was like, oh, doing this activity, so you go on and do that activity, and you don't know how that activity is going to lead to the outcome that you imprinted, but you're going to be breadcrumbed towards that outcome. And this is why a lot of people may not really make that link. How me imagining only the outcome is going to take me there. But it does take you there by subconsciously sending you these hints. And you see what I'm trying to say? I call them visions. You can call them insight as well. You don't have to dream to receive the insight. You may be, doing something, blah, 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 and then there's some realization that just comes at you, and just like, okay, that's it. Just knowingness, that's, it may come to you as this way, but you will be breadcrumb towards your outcome if you have imprinted your outcome. Okay, and this is why you may need also go into this physical reality, because mind is not enough. In the physical reality, you may need to gain some skills, which he, meaning Neville, he didn't actually talk about necessity to gain some skills to accomplish whatever you need to accomplish. But depending on what kind of dream you have, it's not going to happen without learning some skill. And that is also you're going to be guided. There's going to be synchronicities, just like, oh, do this, and then you're going to start learning that skill if it's needed to be learned. Okay, and so therefore that skill, or build something. You may build a business, build a system. When you build something, which is action, which is, by the way, the only thing that you should be worried about building is a system in the physical world. You build a system in the physical world, and if your system is good, then is going to be producing something. This is why, like, if you invest in nature and you plant, lots of plants, it's going to be producing plants. But you created the garden, built the garden, and so then action, and then receiving, right? Then the gifts are coming, because you have built the system that produces your results. And therefore there is this action and relaxation, right? There's time to build the system, and there's time to enjoy whatever that system is producing. And that's a smart and sort of like best way to use your time in the physical world. You got to build systems. You don't do something once. This is like what in the Matrix society, this concept is not really, well understood, and people don't build their own systems. And a lot of people don't build their own system and they rely on some other system. But I personally want to build my own food producing system. I want to have my own supermarket of huge biodiversity and huge um, uh, production yield from one area, and you can call it food forest, survival garden, whatever we want to call it. But that's the system that I'm building in order for me to have my own supermarket and not to, you know, um, rely on the matrix. Okay, so that's pretty much my story today. I tied it in back to the same model that I was always talking about, but this time I use a little bit more the physics, and I made the case of why all entertainment is garbage, and why there's a difference between entertainment and enjoyment. And what else I can say about this? I think that's it. Hopefully it makes sense. You may ask me, say, why are you making these videos? I don't know. I'm enjoying it. Okay. I really don't have anything beyond that. I'm enjoying to make these videos. It helps me put eyes on the dots. Um, and if somebody is applying it and beginning to live a life in the right way, which is not easy at the beginning, everything that I'm describing, then there's more people that are like-minded. In this case, it's not just like-minded, it's just like are in the mode of being that is similar to mine. And there's a certain type of fun in this, you know and if you see how it all works, if you see it within yourself, then then everything is gonna be all right. And by the way, man, everything in this life is temporary. So what can you get out of this life that is infinite? Because if you just grow your ego out of this life, and I don't care how good your life looks like, but if you inside you just build a bunch of belief systems and you have a heart of coal, um, you don't have soul, and you have literally, I really don't know. You're probably gonna start off again in the next time until you're gonna gain that soul. I hope so. Or it might be that there will be no next life, because there's only the soul can incarnate and then in next life. It might be there's a lot of people who sold their soul is not um it's not a redeemable act. I mean, you technically everything should be redeemable, but there has to be some sort of intention. Uh, Sometimes people call it like repentance or whatever, to redeem yourself. but some people will never do, and I think then they will never have soul, and um, they will not have an experience of incarnating in another life, or even having an experience outside just this reality. And honestly, from my perspective, it doesn't really matter. Everything might be just a projection, and then there's some people have to play villains, right? So, but now, based on what I'm seeing, is that technically even villains are redeemable, but maybe, huh? Well, yeah. What I'm trying to say here, I just don't know. But logically speaking, anybody who has no soul and just ego is not real, and acting from the memory disk, so to speak, because ego is just memory. So how can they 100% predictable? Um, it's just non-player character. So that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.